Om. Om. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Just give me a minute, okay? I think we saw up until this verse yesterday. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena, Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanyah, Ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti, Shrutvapyenam vedana chaiva kaschid. I think this was actually a repeat of what we did the last week, but Dr. Mara had read this again. I'll just read the last two paras and we'll continue. The self is something that is impossible to talk about, and the one who comes to listen, the one in many millions, is a wonder. Such a person thinks that knowledge of the self is very important, whereas everyone else thinks of it as nonsense. They think those who take 3 years to study self-knowledge are wasting their time. They will say that you are fritting away the prime of your life, that you could have had 2 children in the same amount of time. There are so many aspects to this wonder. The wonder with a capital W. Any way you look at it, it is a wonder. The one who is able to see the Atma is a wonder. Or we can say that the one among many who sees the Atma does so with wonder. Also, there is no wonder that even after listening to the teaching, there are those who do not understand. This second interpretation is offered by Shankara in his commentary on this verse. So, the self is something that's impossible to talk about, and the one who comes to listen, the one in many millions, is a wonder. This is that the verse in Gita which says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatapi siddhaye. Yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvatah. That is, amongst millions, there are only a few who, there is only one among millions who actually seeks self-knowledge. And even among those that seek self-knowledge, there is only one or very few, one or few that actually realize the self. So that's the whole wonder about it. Dehi nityam avadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam shochitumarhasi. Bharata, or descendant of Bharata, Arjuna, sarvasya dehe, in the body of all, I am this Dehi, indweller of the body, Nityam, forever, Avadhyaha, indestructible, Tasmat, therefore, Tvam, you, Sarvani, all, Bhutani, beings, Shochitum, to grieve, Na arhasi, ought not. Bharata, Sarvasya Dehe, Ayam Dehi, Nityam Avadhyaha, Tasmat, Tvam, Sarvani Bhutani Shochitum na arhasi. This Atma, the indweller of the body of all beings, is ever indestructible. O descendant of Bharata, therefore, you ought not to grieve for all these people. Here Krishna summed up his original statement that he made in verse 11, that there is no cause for grief. Atma is Sat and therefore Nitya, meaning that it is not subject to birth, death, change, and so on. In the live physical body of any being, there is a Dehi, an indweller of the body, Deha. And this Dehi, called the Jivatma, is not subject to destruction. It is Avadhya. Vadhya means that which is subject to destruction, that which can be destroyed. Avadhya means that which is not subject to destruction. The Dehi is not subject to destruction at all. It is Nityam Avadhyaha. It is always indestructible, meaning that even when the body is destroyed, the Atma is not destroyed. This is the point that Krishna wanted to establish. The Dehi, the indweller of the body, is not destroyed even when the body is destroyed. This being so, Krishna told Arjuna that with reference to all living beings, Sarvani Bhutani, you do not qualify to be sad. Tvam shochitum na arhasi. Krishna backed his statement with all possible arguments. For the body Deha, which is Anitya, there is no way that it will not be destroyed. And for the Nitya Atma, there is no way of destroying it. Either way, therefore, there is no room for grief based on death, nor is there any room for grief on the basis of any other situation, as has already been pointed out. because any situation that causes you sorrow is not a permanent situation. Therefore, dukkha also comes and goes, as does sukha. Because there is no content to dukkha, we cannot even say that a particular object or situation causes it. It is one's thinking with reference to a particular object or situation that actually causes dukkha. There can be physically painful or uncomfortable situations, but these are different from sadness. Here we are dealing with sadness, not mere physical pain. So this is again reiterating what he said in verse number 11, which is actually the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, beginning of the teaching. Ashochan anvashocastvam prajnavadamscha bhashase gatasun agatasunscha nanushocanti panditaha. So he says the body, deha, is anitya, whereas the dehi, the indweller of the body, atma, the jivatma, is eternally non-indestructible, is always indestructible. So what are you grieving for then? So in either situation, there is no cause for grief, because dukkha and sukha keep coming and going. You cannot change that. Painful, uncomfortable, and painful situations will continue to happen. But what is the problem? The sadness is only a way of thinking. So that thinking has to be altered. So here we are dealing with sadness, not mere physical pain. So the nature of sadness. Sadness does not depend on what you have or do not have. It is a particular way of thinking. Sorrow is something centered on oneself. And this topic is the subject matter of the Gita. Thus, there is this refrain, you should not grieve. Natvam shochitum arhasi. Having stated that there is no reason for sorrow, Krishna then takes up the same topic from other standpoints. In fact, he exhausted every possible standpoint. Introducing the next verse, Shankara says that from the standpoint of ultimate reality, Paramartha Tattva Apekshayam, sorrow or delusion is not possible. Shokaha mohaha va na sambhavati. And it is also not possible from the standpoint of relative reality. Arjuna may well have said to Krishna, I am worried about Bhishma and the others, and you're telling me that the Atma does not die. Bhishma is my grandfather, a man whom I respect. Therefore, I cannot kill him. Just to think of it causes me sorrow, and all you say that he is the Atma, he is eternal, etc. What are you doing to me? When I am sorrowful because someone is dead, you cannot come and tell me that no germ can kill the Atma, when in fact the germs kill the person. It just does not work. Here too, what you are saying is too much for me. Arjuna would not really have argued in this way because he himself had asked for self-knowledge. Until he asked Krishna to teach him, Krishna did not teach. He only encouraged him to fight. Only when Arjuna asked did Krishna begin to teach him, because Arjuna wanted Shreyas. He told Krishna that he was his Shishya and therefore Krishna taught. Even though this was not Arjuna's thinking here, Krishna nevertheless exhausted the topic. He did not allow any standpoint, even relative standpoints, to go unattended. In this way, from both the absolute and the relative standpoints, we can understand Krishna's statement that there is no reason for sorrow. So the relative standpoint here is that the deha is destructible. And the absolute standpoint, the Paramartha Tattva Apekshaya, that is saying that the Dehi, the indweller of the Deha, that is the Jivatma, is always indestructible. So either standpoint, there is no cause for grief. So any sharing on this before we go on to the next verse? So Krishna was such a perfect teacher. He did not start teaching until and unless Arjuna asked for it. There's a lot to learn from here because normally we just start giving free wisdom here and there just because we have some concepts, we know something. That is something we need to refrain from. Until and unless someone asks for help or asks for some, we should not just keep giving away free. We have this tendency to dinner table knowledge and things like that. So that we should be mindful of. Because the frame mind, the mindset, until and unless it is in a receiving mode, it would not receive anything. Arjuna in the whole of the first chapter was in a lamenting mode. He was only thinking, he was all overcome by so much of sorrow that he kept lamenting. This is what will happen, that is what will happen. We'll go to hell. There will be so much of adharma, and we will be the cause for that. I will be called Guru Sudana. You are okay, your Madhusudana. So all of that was his mindset. So at that point, if Krishna had just started talking to him about Atma, nothing would have gone in. So Krishna waited till Arjuna said, Shishyasteham Shadimam Tvam Prapannam. And I want Shreyas. So the student has to be prepared and the student has to be ready to receive this knowledge. And once he got the leeway, Krishna did not leave any stone unturned. Such a perfect teacher. He gave he closed in all the loopholes. Every standpoint he got him to say, Shochitum na arhasi. And so many verses, more than I think 10 verses, where he says, Natvam shochitum arhasi. There is no cause for grief.
Yeah. This the sadness again, it's related to the thinking part, not the physical pain or uncomfortable situations, right? In that sense. So when you're addressing sadness, there need not be sad because of this knowing the Atma and the Anatma.
Yeah.
And that
So is it that the same relative reality? Is this what is spoken that in that sentence?
relative reality is with respect to the Deha. See, Deha, that's what he says here, no?
Here. Second, nature of sadness, second paragraph.
Huh. Also, and it is also not possible from the standpoint of relative reality. Relative reality here is the sense of the deha. Absolute reality is the dehi, atma, because atma is eternal, nitya, and abadhya. It is indestructible. Nityam abadhyoyam. So there is no cause for grief because what is it? It remains. Who are you killing? You cannot kill the atma. So from the paramartha tattva standpoint, there is no cause for grief. Now, with respect to the relative standpoint, with respect to deha, see, that's what was mentioned here, right? So, for the Krishna backed his statement with all possible arguments. For the body, deha, which is anitya, there is no way that it will not be destroyed. And for the nitya atma, there is no way of destroying it. Either way, therefore, there is no room for grief based on death.
What is this apakshayam? It's
Apaksheya. Apekshayam. Apekshayam is relating to the Paramartha Tattva. Point of, yeah.
Okay, then the sorrow is not possible.
So from the relative standpoint, Deha is constantly changing. That is the nature of the Deha. So even from that standpoint, there is no way you can keep Bhishma and Drona eternal. I'm talking of the body. Their body cannot be eternalized. That physical body in the form of Bhishma, Drona will certainly undergo change and will continue with this change, this modification, and will die at one point. Because if we go back to the definition of Stula Shariram in Tattva Bodh, it is Panchikrita Panchamahutaihi Satkarmajanyam Sukhadukkadi Bhogayatanam Shariram Asti Jayate Vardate Viparinamate Apakshiyate Vinashyatiti Shad Vikaravat Etat Stula Shariram. So that the relative standpoint is from the standpoint of the gross body. That is anyway going to get destroyed. So even from that standpoint, there is no cause for sorrow. And the sadness is only a way of thinking. We think that we are eternal. We think that this body is eternal. There is something eternal in us. And what is that? That is the Atma. So this Atma, Anatma, Viveka is what needs to come in order to get out of the sadness. As long as there is Atma, Anatma, Aviveka, as long as there is ignorance, there will be sadness. Which is what Swamiji was mentioning here in this paragraph. Arjuna may well have said to Krishna, I'm worried about Bhishma and the others, and you are telling me that the Atma does not die. So this is a way of thinking that Arjuna was caught up in. That's why he said Guru Sudana and Madhusudana, right? Whereas from Krishna's standpoint, what was he coming from? He is epitome of Atma, Anatma, Viveka, whereas Arjuna was Atma, Anatma, Aviveka. He did not know the difference between Atma and Anatma, which is what Krishna has nicely, painstakingly is given in so many different standpoints. See, that's why he says he did not allow any standpoint, even relative standpoints, to go unattended. In this way, from both the absolute and the relative standpoints, we can understand Krishna's statement that there is no reason for sorrow. See, if you remember that verse, Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya, Shitoshna Sukha Dukkadaha, Agama Payino Nityaha Tam Stitikshasva Bharata. So he's talked about that from the relative standpoint. He says, there will be, as long as the sense organs contact sense objects, there will be sukha and dukkha. Agama, paino, anitya. They're not permanent. Therefore, what should you do, Arjuna? Endure them. Don't be entangled in them. Don't become sorrowful because of them. Endure them. Go through it. That is why any challenges we face, with this knowledge, we go through them rather than get engulfed in them. Shall we move on to the next verse? Krishna then continued, Sarvadha Swadharmamapi chaveksha navikampitum dharmardhiyuddha shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. Swadharma, one's own duty, api cha, and also aveksha, looking at, vikampitum, to waver, na arhasi, you ought not, he, for dharmyat yuddhat, that than a righteous war, kshatriyasya, for a kshatriya, anyat, any other, shreyaha, good, na vidyate, does not exist. Swadharmam apicha aveksha vikampitum na arhasi. He dharmyat yuddhat kshatriyasya anyat shreyaha na vidyate. And also, from the standpoint of your own duty, you should not waver. For there is nothing greater for a kshatriya than a righteous war. So now, shifting from the absolute standpoint, Krishna then takes up the relative standpoint of dharma. What is right? What is to be done? This was a natural outcome of Arjuna's earlier and numerous comments on dharma. He had said that societal confusion would be the result of this war, and he would be the cause for the confusion. He had said, we have heard, O Krishna, that those men who have destroyed the family duty live in hell. The first 44th verse of Gita 1. Thus, Krishna looked at it from the standpoint of dharma as well as from other standpoints, including worldly gain, as we shall see. So till now, I was just talking about the Atma, Anatma, Deha and Dehi. Now he's coming to the standpoint of Dharma. Dharma is also relative, right? Because when you look at the absolute standpoint, there is no right wrong. Right wrong happens only in the Vyavaharika Sattva. Vyavaharika Sattva, that is the relative standpoint. Aveksha means seeing from the standpoint of Swadharma, seeing what is to be done by oneself. Again, Arjuna was being told here that he was not eligible to develop this trembling hesitation. Navikam pitumarhasi, looking at the situation from the standpoint of his Swadharma, his duty. First of all, Arjuna was a soldier, Kshatriya. Secondly, he was a crown prince, which meant that, along with his brothers, he was supposed to protect Dharma. He was not just a recruited soldier with only certain prescribed duties to do. He was a royal person belonging to the royal family and also one of the crown princes. Arjuna's duty was to uphold law and order. He had to administer and protect the kingdom. That was his job, his dharma. When the Pandavas came back to claim their country after their 13 years of exile, Duryodhana refused to give their kingdom back. All their efforts at a compromise failed. He refused to give them even a needle point of land, let alone their country. Therefore, Duryodhana was the usurper. Every day that Duryodhana occupied the throne, he did so illegally, and this was adharma. Krishna told Arjuna that being a Kshatriya, he could not just sit and allow adharma to continue. Therefore, from the standpoint of his own dharma, Arjuna ought not to waver or hesitate about what he had to do. Swadharmam api cha aveksha navikampitum arhasi. Arjuna's duty. A soldier is especially trained in warfare and must practice continually during peacetime to keep the powder dry and to keep his wits sharp. If he has to retire before a war actually occurs, his skills go unused, although it was his and others' good fortune that there was no war. Not to fight is also proper if there is no cause to fight. But, as Krishna said, if that same soldier gets a chance to use his training legitimately, there is no greater opportunity than that to show his skills. Generally, when such chances come, there is always some legitimacy about them. To shoot someone merely because he or she spoke out of turn is definitely illegitimate. But here for Arjuna, there was a legitimate chance. Dharmat anapetam dharmyam, that which was not against dharma. The battle Yuddha was based purely on dharma, and the one who brought Arjuna to it deserved to be punished. This then was a dharmya yuddha, an expression that is often misused. Here, the dharmya yuddha was, first of all, to establish dharma. Also, the person who had flagrantly violated dharma by usurping the kingdom deserved to be punished. Thus Krishna as much as said to Arjuna, the battle is right in front of you, Arjuna. You now have a chance to demonstrate your weapons and skill, and it is your duty to do so. Arjuna's weapons had gone unused for a long time. They had been stockpiled and maintained so that they would not become rusty. Most of his missiles were in the form of mantras, and Arjuna had to repeat these mantras daily because they were the power behind the weapons. This was how the weapons were kept alive and was how Arjuna kept the powder dry. Arjuna had done what was required, and now a time had come when all of his acquired skill was to be used for the purpose for which it was learnt and stockpiled. He did not learn all this to destroy people or to demonstrate his prowess, but to protect Dharma, and now was his chance to do so. Thus, from the standpoint of his own Dharma, as to what had to be done, there was no room whatsoever for lamentation or hesitancy. This was one argument that Krishna put to him. Another argument Krishna put forward was that for a Kshatriya, especially one of Arjuna's stature, there was nothing more appropriate for him to do. What is to be done by you, Arjuna, is to be done by you. And this Yuddha is something that is to be done by you, said Krishna. So before we go on to the next verse, let's just do Manana on this. So in this verse, Krishna is looking at it from the standpoint of dharma. Again, that's another relative standpoint. Like Deha is a relative standpoint. Now he's talking about Swadharma. So, Swadharmamapi chaveksha navikampitum Swadharmamapi chaveksha navikampitum. Even looking at your own Swadharma, that you things that you ought to do as a Kshatriya. He's not just another recruited soldier who just needs to follow orders. Here his role is that of a Kshatriya, of a prince. And on behalf of everybody, for the sake of everyone, his duty is to uphold dharma. And what was the adharma that was happening? Duryodhana refused to give them their due share of the kingdom. Forget about a due share. Even a needle point of land he was unwilling to give. So every moment that Duryodhana was sitting on the throne, or rather his father sitting on the throne, there was adharma flouted. Adharma was continuing incessantly. So that had to be stopped. So the very fact that the very reason for the war is a pious reason. Whereas normally these jihadis that are ongoing right now, they are they are primed and they're told, if you kill, you will get heaven. And that is why they go on mindlessly, heedlessly, they keep killing people. That is the intention behind that is totally um, chaotic. It is not done with that purpose. The purpose here is to uphold dharma. The purpose for the jihadis and all that is to, they kill, they go to heaven. That is such a wrong interpretation. That is why there are so many versions. I mean, it's best to read a version that follows sampradaya. There are so many interpretations of Bhagavad Gita from people from the West who have written their commentaries, and the younger generation, the current younger generation, can be so easily misled by reading these so-called Western interpretations. I'm not lumping all of them. I've not read any of them, but then by with interactions, you get to know that there are some books written on Bhagavad Gita. There are books, commentaries written on the Bhagavad Gita by people from the West. But we do not know whether they have a solid background of Vedanta, whether they're coming from the Vedantic aspect, from the Advaita Sampradaya. So it's very easy to get misled. So that is why this verse has been very wrongly misinterpreted by several people.
Earlier, yesterday, I read the significance of the commentary
Correct.
of Shankara. Remember, like how they explained it.
Yeah, Bhashyakara and
Yeah, for the original text, for which is done by Bhashya, is that
and
commentary?
and the
Yeah.
text is what Bhashya is what it is, not just an explanation, but it is justifying, it is substantiating what is mentioned in the Shastra.
Yeah, exactly. The Shruti, and
Shruti.
it has to be
Correct.
qualified to
Hmm.
do that Bhashya, right? Like Upanishad
Yeah.
uh, to level. So Gita has been one of the texts that qualified us that from Upanishads And then they went on saying that Tika Karta,
Hmm.
Tika Kara, and then Vartikara, something like that.
Vartikakara.
Vartika.
Vartikakara.
Mm. That.
Yeah, so people from the West, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't want to
No,
blame anyone.
I definitely understand. Like,
Mm,
like people take the superficial one, right? Like,
mm,
oh, even I hear from even our own uh, nationality, meaning like, oh, Krishna said, just get up and fight.
mm.
That's all, they think, but then they're underlying the whole reason why, like the Swadharma, all that things. Um, Especially, when you talk about Dharma itself, we have to understand what it means in the first place.
So you see where Krishna is coming from.
Mm.
It requires um, that keenness, that intellect has to be so sharp, that
Basic
viveka has to be
knowledge.
so
Yeah.
sharp that
Yeah.
you distinguish what is your swadharma, what is
Mm.
dharma, what is adharma. Number one, you need to
Right.
have that viveka. Like
Mm.
we need atma anatma viveka, we also have to have the viveka of dharma and adharma. Only then can we say, yes, I have to. And the second step would be, what is your swadharma? That keenness also should be there. That intellect has to be so sharp that you know what is your dharma. That clarity in the mind has to be there.
Yeah, even to understand this Vedanta, right? It takes multiple layers
Mm.
of yeah, not just only thinking, understanding. It is very important. Uh, and again, we are reading this, and like especially last 10 verses, pretty much saying the same thing, right? In the sense, but in a different way, they're bringing it. But this is different one, like Swadharma.
Yeah, so from different standpoints.
Yeah.
So, so now is Arjuna, Krishna is now centering it on Arjuna himself. So he says, now listen, this is what you are. You're a Kshatriya, you're a crown, you're a prince, and you have to uphold Dharma. Therefore, there is no way you can. And you've been doing this, you've been keeping the powder dry by practicing, by rehearsing, by doing all of this. There has come a time now for you to utilize it. And you're utilizing it not just for fun, not just to have some entertainment. It is to do your duty, to uphold Dharma. See, that is what he did not learn all this to destroy people or to demonstrate his prowess. It is not to earn fame as a Kshatriya, oh, you kill so many people. No, it is not for that. It is to protect Dharma. And it so happens that your Bhishma, Drona are on the opposite side. So it's not like you want to kill them, but there's no other option for you. They've chosen to be there, or rather, they were forced to be there. The situational force, the situation was such that they had to be on the side of Duryodhana, compelled to be, much against their own wish.
Yeah, they chose to do it for the sake of their commitment to whatever they chose in the past, and then at the same time, they were at least Bhishma and Drona were at least Bhishma vowed that he won't kill anyone like Pandava because they know Pandava side is the Dharma. They stand by Dharma. These people are on the Adharma side. They're going to die. They know that already, and and then they know wherever Krishna is, that Dharma stands there. Not blindly, but at the same time, uh, much awareness, but when it comes to Arjuna, probably he did not uh, get. I mean, he didn't know about it until that point. He became sad.
Mm.
Yeah,
We can now understand how Arjuna was caught up by sadness, right? Because it's
yeah.
his way of
It
thinking.
it is, yeah, exactly that sentence it says, right. That sadness is not
Mm.
because of the pain or some suffering.
Mm.
It's just the way of thinking, like, obviously, uh, and that much explanation, understanding what this atma and atma, what the world is nitya, illusion, or all that, right? I mean, that one verse, couple of verses before this, that unmanifest, what is that, avyakta
Avyaktadini bhutani
yeah, and
vyakta
then the
vidyani
mat,
bharata.
vyakta matyamo
Avyakt
navyakta
nidhananyeva tatyaka tatraka paridevana.
yeah. So that's something, all these things, we know it, but we don't think coherently in that order, right? Like, even yesterday, as I was reading Atma's Wonder, we think Atma is in you and in everything else, but then the way it was described, it's so amazing, like, oh yeah, we have to meditate like this. Like, you have to see yourself like that, and kind of stuff.
So you see, it's such a blessing to be exposed to this knowledge. There are so many, like what Gurudev says, that are not even aware of what's going on in their mind. It's this human birth is not just to eat, live, enjoy, make merry, and die. This human birth is to evolve to the highest potential, which is to
Yeah,
realize your true nature.
when
So,
I tell my friends, oh, I have class in the evening, I don't want to miss it, but oh, you've been taking for so long. I know I'm taking so long. It's not easy to understand, and in the sense, on top of that, keeping it in your mind all the time.
mm,
Uh, the practice, um, what takes for us to
yeah,
overcome. I mean, get there.
that is why this thing has to be listened to punah punaha,
Yeah,
again and again.
yeah. That really helps, I think, to keep in touch.
Mm. So
I
we'll
mean,
go on.
especially the second chapter. We time and again, even though we are still dwelling on it, I really feel good about it, because you feel like you're understanding a lot more, and it also trying to stick in your mind for a little bit more. You know, every time we read it, it's good.
Yeah. Any more sharing on this? यदृच्छया चोपपन्नं स्वर्गद्वारमपावृतं सुखिनः क्षत्रियाः पार्थ लभन्ते युद्धमीदृशम् Cha and Partha, O son of Pritha, Arjuna, Yadrichaya, by chance, Upapannam has come, Apavritam, opened, Swargadwaram, the gates of heaven, Idrisham, of this kind, Yuddham, battle, Sukhinaha, lucky, Kshatriyaha, Kshatriyas, Labhante, get. cha partha yadrichaya upapannam apavritam swargadwaram idrisham yuddham sukhinaha kshatriyaha labhante. And O son of Pritha, only lucky Kshatriyas get this kind of battle, which has come by chance, and which is an open gate to heaven. Yadricha means chance, something that happens without your willing or wanting it. Here, Krishna told Arjuna that the gates of heaven were open to him. This was something that had come to Arjuna without his desiring it. It is said that a person who dies performing his or her duty goes to heaven. It is a karma phala promised by the scripture. Therefore, Krishna said, when you perform your duty properly, heaven, Swarga, will be the result. The gates of heaven have opened for you without any prayer on your part. Krishna also told Arjuna in this verse that this kind of battle, Yuddham Idrisham, is not gained by ordinary people, but only by the very lucky ones. Sukhinaha kshatriyaha labhante. A question may arise here. Does this mean that the Kshatriyas in Duryodhana's army were unlucky? No doubt, they were also going to fight, but they had conflicts because they were supporting a usurper. Unlike Arjuna, they were not able to fight with a clean heart. Of course, they were soldiers and they had their own reasons for fighting. They may even have said it was their duty, and perhaps that was true. But still, for them, the inner conflict was unavoidable. As soldiers, they could only do what they were commanded to do. Therefore, they too were doing their swadharma. But at the same time, it was not totally dharmya because their leader was a usurper. The entire army of Duryodhana, including Bhishma and Drona, were not totally convinced that they were about to do what was according to their dharma. What they were about to do was according to their dharma. They were there primarily because they were obliged to Duryodhana. The war was foisted upon them and was not therefore totally in keeping with dharma, whereas for Arjuna it was. Arjuna's chance to protect dharma. While no one enjoys a war, a Kshatriya who has to protect dharma could never have a better chance to prove himself as a Kshatriya. Arjuna was a warrior. Therefore, Krishna may have said, only lucky Kshatriyas get a clean yuddha to fight. It is no longer a question of your ambition for a kingdom, because you were already willing to accept a house with 5 rooms. You have explored every possible way to avoid this war, but in spite of all your efforts, war has been declared, and it is definitely a dharmya yuddha. Even from the standpoint of dharma, Arjuna, you have no cause to grieve. So even when Krishna began to teach Arjuna, his original statement was Ashocyan Anvashochastvam. The 11th verse in chapter 2. Having established it as a fact, Krishna then told Arjuna that he is aggrieved for no reason, that grief has no real basis. This was Krishna's argument. First, he dealt with it absolutely, and then from simple, relative standpoints based purely on one's own duties, Swadharma. If we look at Arjuna's conflict from the standpoint of the Dharma Shastra, we find that performing one's duty produces certain karma phala. The Dharma Shastra deals with what is to be done and what is not to be done, what is right and what is wrong. It talks about the immediate result, drishta phala, of right action in the sense that the action produces no conflict. Avoidance of conflict is the immediate result. The Dharma Shastra also talks about adrishta phala. an invisible result credited to your account and enjoyed by you later. The war Yuddha for Arjuna was in keeping with his duty. Therefore, the war itself was like the gates of heaven opening for him. Because any dharma can only produce so much, going to heaven, of course, is a relative result. And as though by accident, without any prayer on his part, this result was assured to Arjuna. All he needed was all he needed to do was to walk into the war and do what was to be done. Only the lucky ones get such an opportunity, not everyone. So then Krishna continued with the same argument. So the whole of this dharmayarthi yuddha shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. Swadharmamapi chaveksha navikampitum arhasi. So you have no reason to hesitate. Go ahead and do your swadharma. And this is only the lucky ones get such a chance to prove, to uphold dharma. So it has two results, drishta phala and adrishta phala. Any karma. Right? This is again a relative standpoint. So the drishta phala is the immediate result, that is getting free from the conflict in the mind. See, all those on Duryodhana's side had this most of them, I would not say all, most of them had this conflict. They knew they were supporting adharma, but because they were obliged to Duryodhana, they had no choice but to fight against the Pandavas. So that was their conflict. That was their adrishta karma phala. Adrishta karma phala is opening the gates to heaven. Right? So it is an invisible result that is credited to your account and that you enjoy later. So we'll do some manana on this. It's already time for us to close. We can do a bit of manana on this tomorrow and then continue with the next verse. But we can take a minute or two. Anyone wants to share anything immediately? You can. We'll close here today then. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Sarvam Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Meditation is accepting this moment, living every moment totally with depth. Let us keep our spine erect and body relaxed and eyes closed. Relax your shoulders. Keep a big smile on your face. You're sitting like the statue of Buddha very serene, and with a serene smile on your face. Relax your body. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your chest region, throat and chest region. If you notice some tension in the body, just let it be. Except those parts of the body where you feel a tension, the other parts are in comfort. Other parts are at peace. Become aware of that also. There are many good things about you and inside of you. Acknowledge them. They will never leave you. And the negative aspect you may see in you is never going to stay with you forever. They are all guests for some time. Let them be. Sit with the total acceptance of yourself the way you are at this very moment. Total acceptance of what is now here will lead us to deeper meditation. Let go of all the effort. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let go of all your effort and be in this emptiness. And slowly and gradually become aware of body and surroundings. And you may gently open